ride with me in my foul life.
We back, Wildfowl. What's up, everybody? The Fowl Life Podcast. Hope y'all are enjoying the giant gear issue. Co-host Skip Knowles is still with us. He's been unbelievable so far. The guy's knowledge, I mean, his ability to put words on paper with a pencil. He still uses an old-fashioned typewriter. He reminds me of that movie Misery when the guy gets his ankles broke. That's the kind of writer that Skip is. This dude is so passionate. He's like a nerd. Like, he'll get into the duck blind with you and just start dissecting the entire hunt. And when you read an article that he writes, it just makes you live through the man's typewriter. That's what I love about you, Skip Knowles. How are you, my brother?
Very good, man. Very good. My wife calls me, she never lets me get full of myself. She calls me an edinerd.
Edinerd?
Yeah, very glamorous. It's not quite like editor-in-chief. Edinerd. Yeah.
Edinerd. We also have on the podcast, you've heard him here before, probably, I don't know if he's the coolest guy I know in the waterfowl industry, but he's in the top 3 for sure. Laid back, fun to party with, fun to hunt with, fun to eat with. I've eaten sushi with this guy. I've eaten crawfish with this guy. I've eaten barbecue with this guy. I've cooked with this guy. I've had bonfires with this guy. I've been all over with this guy. He's one of the best hunters I know. Drew Keith, CEO of Honey Break, Louisiana. How are you, my brother?
Doing good. Hell, I thought you were talking about Beckham.
Oh, you were? Well, Josh is our last guest today. Josh Beckham. I met Josh in Devon Singleton through a timber hunt in Arkansas, and the dude can just absolutely get after mallard ducks. He now works full-time for Banded Brands. He knows the brand forwards and backwards like the back of his hand, and he lives this life. He is in the field, whether he's hunting, whether it's off season, he's training one of his badass labs. He's an amateur dog trainer, competition guy, tons of ribbons, tons of titles. Josh Beckham, Banded Brands. How are you, my man?
Pretty good. Just getting back in the swing of things, getting ready for a big fall.
I love to hear it. This is the Wildfowl. This is the annual giant gear issue. I know y'all got it. Drew, I've been saying this for a long time, that if I walk into a duck hunting lodge, such as the world-renowned Honey Break, one of the nicest in the world, and I don't see this magazine laying somewhere around, I don't take that lodge or the operation serious. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Thank you very much. Today's episode is about this section right here. For all of y'all watching on YouTube or the Fowl Life TV, you can check it out right there. Clothing, waders, and camo. This section's important. I want to ask y'all this. I'm going to start with you, Drew, and I'm going to move to Beckham, and I'm going to end it with Skip. I want all of your opinion. You often hear this said thrown around in our industry. Man, I wish I'd have been alive during the golden years. I wish I would have got to hunt during the golden years, man. Back in the day, I bet you it was just raining ducks. Well, let me tell you something. In my opinion, this is the golden years. And this is one of the big reasons why, Drew Keith, is this kind of stuff that we get to wear in today's hunting. Would you agree with this? And please give us your opinion on that statement I just made.
Well, for sure, it's the golden years. I mean, if you look at the numbers are definitely higher, but the numbers as far as the ducks are higher. Now, what's different is there's so many more duck hunters now. And you have so many different people up and down the flyway. I mean, look at the central flyway. I mean, it has just blossomed over the last 5 to 10 years. So to me, yes, we are in the golden years. Yes, I do remember back in the day when you could go out there to Catahoula Lake or you go to the Delta and you just see the sky black out like claypoles. I mean, that's just stuff that. But back then, that was kind of the only spots where you had habitat for. So now you got all these different farmers and all these different landowners up and down the flyway that are taking spots that normally or historically weren't waterfowl impoundments and making those. So you got more spots to spread them out. Kind of like us in Louisiana on a wet year. You know, on a dry year we can pump, so we're good. But on a wet year, they're spread out because food, water, and pressure is why a duck's going to move. So you're applying pressure in those historical spots. They're going to go to the non-traditional areas that they have no pressure going on. And that's when the camouflage plays a much larger factor.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Beckham, take what Drew just said and talk about the golden years also transitioning into kids, women, new people in the outdoors, guys that have been hunting for years, like all of us on this podcast right here. Are we warmer? Are we drier? Are we more comfortable? Do we get to stay in the blind longer? Can we adhere the elements a lot more? We're like in the golden age of technology and innovation right now. Is that fair to say, Josh Beckham, Banded Brands?
So let me cut back in. I was gonna. That's where I was going next. But as far as the development in the gear, you when we were growing up, you didn't have anything like we had. You hunted wet. You hunted cold. Now in the advances in technology, I mean, there's gears like, especially in Louisiana, as mild as it is, hot, sweating. If you get too dry on the outside, you're gonna be sweating on the inside. So the gear has definitely made it where it's more comfortable for the person who's not that diehard hunter to go hunt and still have a good time.
I couldn't agree more. Beckham, do you agree with what Drew's saying?
100%. I agree. The golden years, we talked about it this past weekend. Simmons had their big tent sale, and we were sitting there talking about the Aspire series that we have. We'll touch on that later. But what Drew just said is sweat on the inside. Well, the technology has changed that, and the Aspire is kind of targeting what he just said and fixing that. But yes, staying drier, warmer, from a 3-year-old to a 63-year-old, it doesn't matter. There's something for everybody, and it's not, go down there and get your 8-year-old a cotton button-up shirt and a cotton pant and take him duck hunting, because he's probably not going to stay long. He may lose interest. So we have jackets and waders that are just like the grown men or the grown woman to put that kid in, and vice versa. And we can make everybody comfortable and everybody enjoys it. And, yes, the numbers of ducks are higher, but just like Drew said, the number of duck hunters are higher too.
Now, Skip, you sit in that office, and I assume that being a writer and being as influential as you are in this game, as well as your entire crew at OSG and Wildfowl magazine, you probably get to test a lot of this gear. You probably get invited on rider hunts for manufacturers like Banded and other manufacturers. There's a lot of manufacturers that are building great gear right now. Banded is leading the way in a lot of the innovation, in my humble opinion, but I also understand it and admit that there is a lot of good stuff out there. Does it blow your mind, Skip Knowles, when you open that box and put your hands on some of the stuff being created today?
Oh, I just love it, man. There's such a push for innovation that I could count on one hand the top brands, even just 10, 12, 15 years ago, who are making innovative kick butt stuff. They're keeping us drier and warmer than ever. But that number seems to increase every year. Browning's come on so strong with their lines. Forlow just came out. Drake and Banded have always been leaders, and then, of course, Sitka. But there's so much more selection now, and the prices seem to be getting more and more reasonable. And the mentality of approaching getting dressed for the outdoors in terms of a layered system just changed everything. But before we get too much into the details about how everything is so much better and tape seams and everything that we enjoy now, I think we should all tell a story about being absolutely miserable and the uninsulated rubber boots of our youth. Anyone under 30, I think, has probably some horror stories. And I think, I hate to say we're not as tough as we used to be, but with all the competing elements of the internet, kids always blue facing on their phones and all that, if we don't keep them warm and dry out there, they're not just going to go anyway because they want to be with dad and there's nothing else to do. There's a lot else to do now. So right. I think it's almost important in the recruitment of hunters. But if you guys have some horror stories about gear from when you're the olden days that weren't so great as far as gear, I'd love to hear it.
I'm trying to think of a worse one. There's so many. Drew,
you have ones where you needed snake-proof boots and didn't have them.
Oh, my dad had a boat store and sporting goods store in Jonesville, and it seems like I always had the worst gear. I would have, my grandmother at the grocery store there, and she would take the bread wrappers, for the little, and put those over my socks. So my bread bags over my socks. So my red ball boots wouldn't, if I went over them, it was taller than my boots. Well, all that did, what that did? She had duct tape at the top. Well, that made my feet sweat. So miserable. I mean, it's like I had little icebergs for feet. I mean, I can remember riding 3-wheelers and drizzling rain and just like it was freezing, and you had to take turns holding your hand on the throttle, because this hand would get so cold you had to stick it down inside your jacket, like in your armpit, then change back to the other one because you thought your hand was going to fall off. And just in recent years, probably the last 8 years, we're so used to riding in Polaris's, or side by sides with a windshield. And so I dress appropriately, and I had this one spot on my personal property that I couldn't hunt with a UTV. I had to take a four-wheeler. So I get on the four-wheeler, and back then I didn't have a camp down there. Just had to ride from the highway. And it was about a 3.5, 4 mile ride. I mean, just straight down the power line. And by the time I got about half a mile down there, that north wind was hitting me in the face. I'm like, I had not put on enough clothes. It was the same thing. I had flashbacks to that three-wheeler. My hands were about to freeze to that the handlebars versus being behind that windshield. Just that little bit of a difference made a huge difference. We're spoiled. So
we are.
Minnesota. I mean, you're down there in the warm belt.
Yeah, exactly.
But it may be 15 after every day. Never know.
What's that?
Said it may be 15 one day and 80 the next. You never know.
That's right. Yeah, if you don't like the weather in Louisiana, hang around a couple of days. It'll change.
What is the Drew? Skip mentioned layering. I've been down in the bottom of the lodge when all the guides gather, and it could, it might get wet that day. It might be raining like crazy. It might be 80 like Beckham just talked about. But layering is important when you have a climate like Louisiana. Beckham's from Louisiana too. You guys have to deal with a lot of different elements. Like, I'm not saying that Montana doesn't, but if you're hunting ducks in Montana in December, you're probably going to need to stay warm because it's going to be below freezing. It might be 0 degrees, right? But when you're in Louisiana, you have to be prepared for a lot of different possibilities in any given day. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. So what do you appreciate, Drew? What do you look for when you wake up? Do you have a go-to now that every day's the same and your wife is worn out because you won't wash it? Or do you put something new on every day?
No, I've got about four or five of the go-to outfits that that's my kind of my base every day. Like the first time that Chad ever came to hunting break hunting, it freaking snowed down there. And I was like, he's like, man, it's going to be awesome. I said, dude, you don't understand. We're not set up for this. The gas line or the throttle cables on the gator tails were froze up. The steering was froze. I mean, it's just everything. I mean, the drive shafts, the brakes that we washed, we had to quit washing the Rangers at night and put them inside the shed because when you wash them off, the brakes would freeze and not be able to move. So, but as far as us, so we'll start off, meeting everybody at the lodge. Well, you get that ride going out there in a Ranger. Well, then you're behind a windshield, but all of a sudden you get out there in the boat where you're 5 or 6 guys gear or all that kind of stuff. I'm hot natured. So I'm going to get, start getting warm. And by the time you get them all on the blind and then wait out there and put the mojos out, you've seen it several times. I'm shucking layers, just for that first part, and I'll wear gloves while I'm driving the boat or driving the Ranger. But when I get in the blind, I just don't wear gloves. But if you can't layer, then you're either going to be hot from you're going to be sweating, and you're going to get cold, or you're going to be miserable. One of the two.
I'm going to move on to Beckham, but I wanted to say about that hunt. I had been all over the country. I think 18 states that year, 16 or 18 states. Hadn't used the ice eater one time. And we get to Louisiana of all places, and Drew and Tack are like, you ain't got any of them ice eaters in your trailer, do you? And you guys had some. And I'm like, yeah, I got 2 or 3 of them. And we're literally out there putting ice eaters in, putting the generators up on the deck floor, the blind. And I'm like, this isn't happening, right? But I remember leaving Arkansas.
I was with you.
I remember I was leaving Arkansas and it was froze, and I looked at Christian. Christian come down to honey break with me, and I look at him in the blind, Beckham, and I go, I was trying to talk like a Southerner, so I said something like this: how long you reckon it would take a mallard duck to get here from Arkansas? And Christian looked at his watch and said, by about 10. And at 10 o'clock, these groups of mallards started coming into Drew's decoy spread, and I was just like, were you down at honey break with us too, Josh?
Yeah, I was at Prairie Wings with you the night before when the big storm came through, and we left there and went down to honey break. And
yeah, you were with me. I ain't telling you anything. You were there.
I remember somebody saying about 10 o'clock, and I remember just droves after droves coming out of the north. And, I think I forget who was getting the footage. Tyson maybe had the drone out, and, we pulled it back in. They were just coming in on the drone.
They're freaking unreal day at honey break. That's what I love about that place. You might get a canvasback flock in your dish or 20 mallards in a blue sky. But Josh, what is layering. And Banded has a layering system. Drake has a layering system. A lot of manufacturers do, but tell me how it's going to benefit male and female duck hunters, old and new, that to keep them out there longer, to be prepared for anything. Because in this game, we have to do what they call adapting. How can layering help us adapt, and what is layering?
Layering in our industry now is huge, especially when you start talking about uninsulated waders, uninsulated shell jackets, 3-in-1s, et cetera. I'll be the first to tell you, before I went to work for Bandit, I didn't know anything about layering system, nor did I really care about layering system. I wanted to put the most clothes I could because I thought I was going to be warm. Hour into the hunt, I was sweating, I was freezing, and I didn't stay long. But as I came to Bandit and very, very strategic with the layering system, so you start off, we'll go with the base layer. You may have a merino wool or a synthetic base layer that they're all different weights depending on where you're at. Me and Drew, we would wear 180 gram merino, and somewhere in Montana, you may wear, a Primaloft base layer. They're both going to keep you warm for the environment you're in. You just have to determine which is best for you or your body type. And then we move into that mid layer and we have something for everything. A lot of that mid layer is going to be water resistant, windproof. Some of it is a little waterproof. Some stick, some's thin, some's heavy, some's just a mock pullover. Like our teal season down here, we'll wear a mock pullover, and that's it. It may be 85 degrees at daylight. And then we move into the shield where you start talking about full weather protection as far as waterproof, ice, wind, you name it, it's going to protect you. And then you start talking about the liners that zip in and zip out of it, and different grams of Primaloft that we put in it, our HARS insulation that we put in some of our jackets. And then you start connecting that with the wader. And if we could educate people fully, and we've done a really good job at doing it, a lot of people understand that layering system now. We take an uninsulated wader and we can sell to everybody, and they can layer up. And they can't get it through their head that they're wearing an insulated wader, but we still offer that same insulation in a pant or a mid-layer piece. And you could do away with, whatever it costs to do away with the insulation in the wader, and everybody go to an uninsulated wader. But there's some people that have it stuck in their head that they have to have an insulated wader, and that's not the case all the time.
I love the idea that the layering can give the waterfowl hunter the ability to hunt all of these different possibilities in weather, because if I do what you just told me to do, I can survive the elements and stay comfortable on a very, very cold hunt in Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska. I froze everywhere, but you can then take that same setup, change your layering system with that same wader, and go down and hunt teal in Florida and be fine. That's unbelievable, because I don't know how many times, like you mentioned Tyson or a cameraman, where I'm like, well, put those waders on. And we're in California in the Butte Sink, and it's going to be 79 that day. And he's cussing me by 9 a.m. because his insulated waders are destroying his psyche, right? He can't even be creative and can't keep the camera on because he's so pissed off at me, right? This has given us the ability to adapt and be better hunters for longer. Skip, when you hear Josh Beckham and Drew talk like that, is this what you're doing? I know I made mention of your old school antics with your typewriter, but have you evolved into this layering system in all of your hunting travels?
Typewriter's a fad. We're going to go back to writing with pen and paper any day now. Now, I kind of, not to toot my own horn, but being a Western big game hunter and waterfowler from the Pacific Northwest in Washington, spending so many days in 10-degree goose pits and up on Skagit Flats on the saltwater side where everything's just so wet all the time. We got a real handle on layering probably 20 years ago. I've been in the fundamental most important thing for the upper is to have a wicking lower layer, something that breathes, nothing that's cotton. And it'll get the moisture off you. Some of it's kind of polypropylene, still works, but kind of smells quicker. I'm a big merino fan. Any of the merino base layers are just money. They're comfortable. They don't itch. And then you can put anything for your mid layer. You need a waterproof outer layer. I'm from the West. I want a hood. You Southerners don't often wear hoods, but when that downpour comes, I just want to be able to hide from it. Waterproof outer layer upper, merino or severe wicking base layer. And then you can put whatever you want in between. Some things are better than others. Flannel, even hoodies are just fine as a mid layer. if you're not going to wear it in the rain. But I want that waterproof outer layer and a wicking base layer every single time. And I have honestly been wearing mostly 98% uninsulated waders for at least 10 years now. You see
your range of motion is so much better in them.
That's the big thing. I watched my buddy Mike Miller, our boat. I don't know if you guys saw the editor letter and Wildfowl. Our boat drifted off on us this year. I didn't dig the anchor in. There was no one in this big aluminum skiff, but it's big box blind. It was a kite. We all look up and the boat's 200 yards away and going across the bay. And my buddy Mike just started getting, he's a big old fireman. He's about Drew's size, and he had heavy neoprene waders on, and he was very uncomfortable by the time he got a half mile back. And this breathable uninsulated waders are the way to go. There's a place for neoprene still. To me, it feels like you're wearing a giant knee brace, and it's hard to dry out, but it is rugged. It's undeniably not bad in a saltwater environment. But even up on the Bering Sea, we wore the very lightly quilted banded brand of waders, and right there out there on St. Paul Island, America's deadliest catch, one of the nastiest places on earth. And they were extremely warm and comfortable and worked just great.
Drew, well, you just made mention of you can move so much better. I've seen videos of this man wakeboarding. Like, this dude's an athlete. Now, whether or not we all look like athletes anymore, I could run at one time. I know Beckham was a ball player. I know Skip was a wrestler. I watched David Taylor win his first 2 in the Olympics last night, teched both guys. In the second match at 86 kilograms, Skip, he gets a takedown on him. First points he's given up forever, and goes on to go 6 takedowns, techs him 12-2 in the next minute and a half. Unbelievable Olympic wrestling. But I want to get back to Drew Keith for a second. This dude is an athlete, right? Tell me about the psyche of a hunter, Drew, and how what we're discussing plays into that psyche. And Beckham, you're more than welcome to chime in on this too. But when I put on this system we're describing, and that feeling I get from the waders and my ease of movement, like you mentioned, Drew Keith, Honeybreak, Louisiana, I feel like I'm going to be successful. Tell me, does this play a role in today's duck hunter of the better you feel, the better you look, or vice versa, the better you perform, the better, all of this goes together in our confidence level, and staying out there longer, we already mentioned. But does it play a role in your confidence, Drew?
Well, it's definitely, yeah. I mean, I guess it would be confidence is probably the proper word to use. But yeah, like psyche would be another thing. If you're sitting there, just like you said, Tyson with the camera guy, it messed his whole hunt up because he knows he's going to be sitting there sweating. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just if you start positive, you stay positive. So there's so many other things that you can't control that can make your day bad. So we like to try to control all those things that we can, and just leave the rest up to the good Lord.
Josh, when you're at Simmons and other dealer events, or you're at your duck camps throughout the fall and winter, what are you hearing? What I just said, do you hear this? Like, I just feel better. I feel like I'm going to have success. And I think that mentality is what I love about today's innovation. Do you hear this a lot, Beckham?
Oh yeah, 100%. And with the new Spire, we've seen it a lot over the last month. We have these displays, and it's kind of cool display that shows how that material is breathing, and people were just blown away by. I didn't know it could get any better, but and from our standpoint, there's never a finish line in this. We're going to keep continuing to innovate the waterfowl industry and the clothing side of it. And another thing, it's crazy to me of how many people still wear neoprene waders today.
Yeah.
I heard young kids, 16, 18, 20 years old. And this past weekend, I still have my old brush tufts, or I still have my old Max Prairie Wings neoprene waders from, 12 years ago. And it's just crazy to me that with the technology and the innovation that's out there, that somebody is still wearing neoprene. And as it was said earlier, there is a time and place for them, but it's not in Louisiana.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Josh Beckham, because you start to take for granted when you're in them, like, everybody's got these on. I mean, this is no secret. Like, you have to have these on. Like, here's a stat for you guys. This blew my mind. I did a podcast the other day with the head of marketing for Traeger grills. Okay. I know there's a lot of grills out there. I'm thinking, like, everybody in the world's got a Traeger. These are the best things ever. They make food taste good. They're easy, right? 2% of American households have a Traeger grill in their backyard. 2% and they're doing the numbers they are. I'm like, I thought everybody in the country, at least America, had one. That's the same mentality that you're talking about, is how do you not have these waders, right? Going back and taking that big Velcro strap over your shoulder and putting it down. And hey, we loved them, getting them in from Cabela's or whoever it was. They were awesome, but things advance. And it's amazing the mentality that people stay in that, and because they don't know how good it can be, is my opinion of it. And I think that through innovation and through technology and through education, more and more people are starting to see, like, man, we can get this layering system going. Maybe I don't need to buy the heaviest waders out there anymore, and I can still stay dry and warm throughout it. Skip, when you're putting this magazine together, and this cover right here says a lot, right, gentlemen? This is what we do. Like, a lot of people don't do this. There's 4 million turkey hunters in America. There's 3.5 million predator hunters in America. I think there's upwards of, Skip, correct me if I'm wrong, 14 million deer hunters. And I think there's only about 1.7 to 2.2 million duck hunters. One, it's not easy. Two, it's expensive. No doubt that if you have an arsenal and a portfolio in this game, you got to have a trailer with a dry field setup, or you got to have a boat, you got to have this, whatever. Three, I'm not getting up that early and going out in the cold, dark, wet swamps and walking around the water. This is what we do. This picture says it all, right? So, Skip, when you're putting this magazine together, what is going through your mind personally of getting to this point? At your age now, Skip, and I know you're still a very young man, but when you're putting this magazine together, does this picture make you feel like a kid at Disneyland, like you can't wait to get back there? Because that's my mentality, man. I want to be right there, wet, with my waders keeping me dry and warm. I don't care what the elements are. I'm coming out of there with a strap and a happy dog. Skip, are you on mute?
I'm sorry, I've got that cough, so I keep trying to make sure that I don't interrupt.
You're all good.
But yeah, that's aspirational days are what it's all about, man. And the gear is so much part of the fun these days, in terms of, you're going to be more successful if you can stay out there longer, period. And you're going to stay out there longer if you're comfortable. You won't be thinking about how your feet hurt. Most of my bad memories from uninsulated rubber boots when I was a kid, most of it involved my feet. I still remember vividly having my toes just ache. Especially if you're a little kid and you're sitting on a blind, your feet are off the floor, it cuts off the circulation in your legs. Ooh, you stand up and fall down. So many blinds now have it's just so fun to go duck hunting. So many people are cooking in the blind. I never really saw that growing up a lot. I didn't see that from any of the hundreds of guides I've hunted with over the years. But it seems like everyone who has a boat now is starting a day off right with sizzling eggs and all that. And all that creates an experience, along with all this excellent gear, it's going to make you more comfortable and stay out there longer, so you can be more like that guy on the cover and have a better shot at it. Everything's so much better. And I think it's I mentioned it earlier, I think, but with all the competing elements, like, my wife loves the outdoors. She loves to mountain bike. She loves to snowboard. She loves her iPad, which she runs with her phone at the same time, 24/7. There's so many competing elements. If I want her to get into duck hunting, she won't go out there and freeze and go, I just love these birds and being out here. And then no, she needs to be comfortable and have a good time. In order that, having a television camera pointed at her helps, it seems like, too. But
yeah, my wife enjoys a good afternoon deer hunt. She's not so much on the. She's duck hunts a couple of times with it just because it's a family hunt, like Christmas or Thanksgiving. But other than that, it's mostly an afternoon deer hunt.
I got a couple questions on, Drew. I want to ask you about the sentimental part of the hunt. I guarantee you, with you and Beckham, if I said, what's the most sentimental part of the hunt? And you would either say being with my kids or my dog. But taking those two out of the picture, friends and all that, okay, this has nothing to do with camaraderie. What are you sentimental to when it comes to gear? Because we are talking about the 2021 giant gear issue. Are you sentimental to gear? And where I'm going with this, Josh and Drew, you're going first, sorry, is we get boxes of this stuff, right? Josh, you got, I'm looking at that rack behind you and you're probably like, I got to the point in my career, I'm like, I don't know if I ever need to walk into a sporting goods store again. It's almost like we take it for granted.
Right.
Have you lost your sentimental touch to the gear part of this game, or do you still get giddy about it and you have sentimental parts of your hunt still as far as gear goes?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you've seen my hat, how nasty it is. Of course, I mean, I can't not wear my little outfitter hat, but there's still, I mean, just because they keep changing and keep getting things that are better each year. So each year, I still have some of the stuff I've had for 20 years, but I also still get giddy. It's like Christmas time when you get that new box of gear. Of course, my family loves it whenever we change brands or something like that. Which our sponsors change or something like that because they're all getting to be my size. And it's like, ooh, let's go to Drew's house.
Christmas time.
It's Christmas time. But back to that psyche, it's just like when we were little kids, you get a new pair of tennis shoes, like, man, look how much faster I can run in these shoes. It's the same thing.
Josh, do you have sentimental feeling of a jacket or a pair of waders? If somebody touches them, do you get that look of like it's about to be go time if you don't take your paws off of them kind of attitude?
Yeah, depending on what it is. Now, I try to wear everything that we're coming out with just to, as far as the testing aspect of it and keep up with it. But I still have 3 or 4 pieces that are going to be with me every time I leave the house. And there's one jacket that I've had since we first made it. And they made it before I went to work full time for them. And I had it then. I still have it. And it's the Pathfinder. I know everybody knows what the Pathfinder is. It's a waterproof shell jacket. It does not breathe. You will sweat, but it's just something about it. I wore it every single day one year, and it literally rained almost every day. I think it's 2015. It rained a ton. We were hunting in the woods every day, and I kept that Pathfinder with me, and it never failed me. So I keep it in my Lear locker, and it goes with me in the summertime. If I'm out dog training, I'll throw it on. If it starts raining, it's just one of those pieces that stays with me.
I love it. I'm going to ask you another question, Beckham, but I got to point out something to Skip Knowles over there. Skip, if you look right to your right of Josh Beckham, you see that backpack? You see that, Skip?
Yeah.
You got to get one of those. If you don't have one of those, you got to text Josh after this and get one of those because that's the best backpack ever built for the waterfowl hunter. Okay, I just want to say that real quick. Josh, take a couple minutes and explain some of this technology. You've mentioned Aspire a couple times. Drew and I don't know about Skip. Skip may have, but we've been lucky enough to wear this in testing phases as well as all season last year. Amazing. Talk about the technology, the innovation behind it, and what is the Aspire series by Banded that folks can read about in the new gear issue of Wildfowl?
So the Aspire series, we did a soft launch last year. I know Drew wore it, you wore it, and I wore it a lot. The waders, a 3-in-1 jacket, and we had an uninsulated bib that we did too for dry field hunting or whatnot. And the biggest thing of the Aspire is the membrane we used in it. It is event fabric. So event fabric is a membrane that we put inside of these pieces for waterproof and breathability in that piece. So a lot of the competitors of event, they're putting coatings on the back of their membrane, which decreases the breathability and decreases the breathability rate, which in all places it's different. But where me and Drew hunt and you come and travel to Arkansas and Louisiana, we sweat. So the more breathable a product is, that vapor is able to leave out of that jacket. So 30 minutes after the hunt, like we talked about earlier, you're not freezing to death. So actually, I did some testing with the Aspire jacket last year because I wanted to see how much it breathed. Because I've never, ever been able to wear a Primaloft liner inside my jacket anywhere I've ever hunted. And I'm sure Drew can attest to that. You just can't do it down here.
Yeah. A vest is about the extent of mine.
Yeah. So, and I wear a vest if it gets really, really cold.
Right.
But most of the time I'm a mid-layer.
But I can take that off.
With a shell. And the only reason I wear a shell is because I work a dog every day. Right. But that membrane is the most waterproof, breathable membrane there is in the world, hands down. There's a lot of good ones out there, but this one has been proven in a lab against all the other ones. It is the best. And when you start talking about comfort and durability and all the factors that we look for in those membranes and pieces, the Aspire is at the tip top of the game. And back to the 3-in-1, I wore the 3-in-1 and it's got a Primaloft gold liner in it. We use silver and everything else, so it is a little bit warmer. I was sweating, but it's not to the point where the jacket is breathing, and it's not to the point where when you take your jacket off, the back of your shirt's wet at your lower back. You can feel that you're sweating, but when you take it off 2 hours later, you're dry. And that's what we want, because once we sweat and we get chilled down, that's when we get cold and we're ready to go, or somebody's ready to go, or somebody wants another jacket or a heater or whatnot.
Talk to me a second real quick, Beckham, on the gloves. Drew mentioned gloves before. There's an Aspire set of gloves. These are unbelievable. Why would somebody want to choose the Aspire glove over another Banded glove or over another manufacturer's? There's a lot of good gloves out there, but this is a pet peeve of mine because you mentioned having a hard time finding a top that breathed or whatever you're looking for in your layering system in your top. A good glove is hard to find that actually keeps a waterfowler's hands warm, or better yet, Skip, you'll know what I'm talking about here because you love to hunt water, getting them warm after you put out the decoy spread. Okay, because decoy spreads gloves for years, the neoprene glove, you take them off, your hands are still pretty chill. How would you describe this Aspire glove in being able to keep the hands warm and getting the hands warm again after they get cold?
The Aspire glove is jam-packed full of Primaloft gold insulation. It is also made with event fabric, and it's got a leather palm on it. So Eric and Christian have mapped that glove out to put that Primaloft in the direct spots that it needs to be, not just maybe in the palm or just on the top of the hands, because most of the time it's not your palm or your top of your hand, it's your fingertips. So there is actually Primaloft all the way down each fingertip and around both sides that will speed up the rate that your hand is warmed up once you go back into the glove after you may have put your decoys out. But you can put decoys out with that glove on, you just can't shoot with it. It's not a utility glove per se. It's riding to the blind or riding a four-wheeler or putting out decoys.
Exactly. Skip, when you hear Josh talk like that about shooting with the glove on, have you found your ultimate system, Skip? Because to me, having all of these little elements that Drew and Beckham are hitting on is what's going to bring us the best pleasure in what we call a very difficult time of, or a very difficult part of the hunting industry is waterfowl hunting. It can be very uncomfortable if we don't take care of ourselves, leading us to get out of the field. One of the biggest things, Skip, is that shooting finger in your hands. You got your hand out. Can you call with the glove on? Is there a glove out there that I could buy that I could call and operate a short reed can, a goose call, or a spec call with? Because I need that back pressure. I need that manipulation of sound. Plus, I don't want my fingertips to get cold. I want my hands to be comfortable, Skip. You alluded to the fact that your feet would be uncomfortable at times. How important has this gotten in your career of keeping your hands warm and out of harm's way, Skip? Because for years I was like, oh man, I don't need it. I can withstand that. But man, it gets more and more uncomfortable. And now a little bit of arthritis has set in. What does this mean to your hunting career, Skip?
Did it again. Sorry about that. I've had this problem for years, and I had some premium gloves that were Gore-Tex promised waterproof from elite brands that I'd be up in Cold Bay, Alaska or somewhere, and I just can't believe my glove is soaked. Now, we do get water running into the back of the glove, and gloves have a million stitches and seams compared to a larger item, but they can be real problematic, and they can make you miserable in a hurry. And what I've taken to doing over the years is taking a larger, big, insulated, waterproof decoy-style glove with me in the blind bag that'll preferably come up to at least here and go over outer layers, so that when you're running in the boat and grabbing the wet dog and the cold metal gunnels of the boat and dealing with the wind of the boat and then putting out decoys, you have these big, warm, Boss, bulletproof gloves. And then when I'm in a blind or in a layout or anything else, I'll take them off, and I'll wear typically a heavy-ish glove on my left hand and a light one on my right, just for that shoot. So you can't use your gun with a fat glove, and if you drop it and rip it off with your teeth and stuff it in your gun, you're on and off and getting cold. But a light glove on the right hand and a heavier one on the left, and a big burly pair for getting there and putting the decoys out. It's been my go-to. If one glove could solve all those problems, see Drew's nodding, agree.
100%.
Got to get one you can call with, and and manipulate your gun with too. But that's my program. If one glove could solve all those problems, that'd be kind of cool.
I agree 100%. I think that one of the things that we need to touch on in this conversation is the science. We've talking a lot about science right now with innovation, the research, the R&D, the research and development. Josh Beckham mentioned the field testing process. A lot goes in to making us hunters successful and comfortable. We might take this for granted. Like a lot of times hunters take for granted all of the conservation efforts that guys like Drew Keith are involved in, and the work that's being done behind the scenes with sweat equity and elbow grease to ensure habitat and all of this stuff. There's a lot of things that go in to this lifestyle that an everyday hunter could go, well, I didn't think about that. Drew, talk to me a second, because I've heard you talk about, I think you call it pie facing. I think Southerners call it pie facing. This wears a guide out. You work your butt off to put the birds in the decoys. And then all of a sudden, Chad Belding's looking up there like, oh, see what? And I'm just like getting yelled at. The science, Josh Beckham and Drew Keith. Drew, I want to ask you first, because you see this every day, and I know Josh does too. Camouflage. We have patterns on these garments that we're talking about. I want to know the truth right now. Do we need camouflage? Or is it just to make us feel, oh, I'm so giddy? Because I feel my success rate is because of shadowing and camouflage and the mix of all of this and the science that goes behind camouflage. Drew Keith, go first, please. Do we need camouflage patterns?
Well, look, as a kid growing up, I killed a lot of things in blue jeans and flannel shirts and this, that, and the other. As you become a better hunter, you can get away with more. But for me, when I'm taking clients, I'm taking, 50, 60-year-old men who've never hunted before in their life. They need to be camouflaged to the T. I mean, just their eyeballs sticking out. Because just like you said, if you stand there, and when we try to, you've seen our blinds, we try to make the majority of our blinds all facing west. So you're in the shadows on a bluebird day. But that helps with the unexperienced hunter, so the more, depends on who you're hunting with, but for most of the time for us, we're taking people who don't hunt very much, and so the camouflage is most definitely critical into the success of getting the birds in close enough for them to be able to get a good lethal shot on them.
Josh Beckham, I love what you touched on right there, brother, about the experience level of a hunter, because I've had some really, really good timber hunts wearing, I'm sure you have one of the Avery jackets behind you, one of the wax jackets. I've had a lot of, Joel Wicker at Prairie Wings, he lives and dies by that jacket, right? But I really feel that with a good, and Realtree's done a great job with their timber pattern. Other camouflage companies are doing well. There's digital patterns, all this stuff going on. There's a different mindset and ideology by every person out there, to each his or her own. But Josh Beckham, when you put on a camouflage pattern, and again, I mentioned Realtree because I'm looking at the gear issue. They have Max 5 right here. I've heard rumors that there's a new one coming out for 2022. Excited as heck. And then the timber pattern that Realtree has done. Mossy Oak's done patterns. There's a lot of them out there. Nat Gear's an Arkansas-based company that has a camouflage pattern. In your experiences, Josh, with the dealer base and the end consumer, is this eye candy, shelf candy, wool being pulled over our eyes, or is this something that a true proven duck hunter like yourself that is going in there and putting your reputation on the line of like, look, I believe in this pattern. I believe in this garment with this pattern on it. Do you truly feel that camouflage is a necessity and a benefit for the duck hunter, Josh Beckham?
I think that camo has a time and place for everything. And just like Drew said, depending on who you're dealing with, and you've hunted with a lot of unexperienced hunters, and I have too, keeping them concealed because they may not understand stay in the shadow. Yeah. Just don't move. And that camo is going to help break up any kind of outline they give off. And if they move, it may not be as a drastic reaction by the birds if they're wearing camo compared to if they're wearing a solid, because we know you wear a solid, you go stand in the shadows. But there is a time and place, because if you wear that solid in the clouds, there is no shadow to get in. You may look like a black blob or a dark brown blob, and they can pick you out. They don't travel from Canada to Louisiana and not get killed by being dumb. I can assure you that. And by the time they've gotten to us, they've seen everything there is to see. But I do think camo is a necessity. And I think in the store, a lot of guys who go hunting, they associate that with camouflage. Right. Solid is a big player right now, and it's bigger than it ever has been, I think, at least in my time. And we have some solid color pieces that we've done, and they do well. But we also have a lot of camo that does really, really well.
I think that what you said is so dead on of the experience levels of hunters. And I want to tell hunters that your success rate, in my opinion, Josh Beckham, and I'm going off of what you just said, is if you mix the right pattern in the right situation with the ability to learn shadows, movement, when to move. You know, we all have the tendency to look at the wrong time sometimes, but as you get further and further into your career of a hunter, a duck hunter, I'm saying, deer hunter's the same. You know when to draw back your bow. A turkey hunter, you know when to shoulder your shotgun. You start to learn this. My daughter goes out and the canvas backs are coming right at her. I'm like, wait. She's standing up like she's got all the time in the world. They flare off and she's having the best time of her life. Maybe in 5 years, she's going to be like more stealthy, right? As we learn to be more stealth, camouflage helps us to be stealth. Okay. Bottom line, because there's a reason why military wears it when they're stealthy snipers up in the hills. There's a lot of different reasons and applications for camouflage. I believe of what Beckham just said is the gospel of the experience level and camouflage. There's a time and a place, but the two of them mixed together are your number one deadliest combination when it comes to camouflage. Camouflage and moving all around, they're going to pick you apart. But camouflage with stealth, it's going to make you, because I've been in the timber on bluebird days. I promise you, I could have been doing jumping jacks down there, and I could have been wearing pink tutu like Drew does sometimes on Friday nights, and I could have probably killed the greenheads because it was just time to kill them. But most days in the timber, if you're moving around, you're not getting them. You got to kick the water at the right time. You got to not give them something to pick out because they're always, when they get that south in the flyway, they're looking for the boogeyman all the time. So I love what you guys are saying about camo. I love the layering aspect. I love the technology. I love the mindset. You know what I really love is walking into honey break and seeing all those waders hanging and all those jackets and those lockers getting ready to be put on. This is game time, man. This is our Super Bowl. We're not athletes anymore, but dang it, we get to hunt with some of them. Riley Green looks like a freaking football player still, but he's just Riley Green, the duck hunter, when he's at honey break. He might sing I Wish Grandpa's Never Die in front of 14,000 people the other night at Orange Beach, but when he's at honey break, he's just one of us, and he gets so giddy to see all of that camo and all of that gear.
I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, and Riley told me, and I know you're very good friends with Riley Green too, and I'm sure Beckham's met him. Riley told me John Party was just in Reno the other day, and he had a concert in front of 28,000 people that night in my hometown, and he's at my house, Drew Keith. We called you on FaceTime in the truck. Yeah. He's at my house, and all he wanted to talk about was hunting and gear and camo. And I'm not saying that I showed you the back of that truck. He didn't go away empty-handed. The dude was like on the supermarket sweep game show. But the guys and girls out there, I'm telling you, this is such a precious part of being an American hunter. We have, first of all, the manufacturers that are taking the time and the wherewithal to put into this. Christian Curtis, Eric Larsgaard, Banded, Sitka, Browning, you name it. There's work being done right now as we sit on this podcast that's going to ensure us to be better waterfowl hunters, deer hunters, turkey hunters, predator hunters, big game hunters of all sorts, squirrel hunters. I want to be comfortable when I'm chasing squirrels with Jackie Bushman next year. But this magazine right here, this is the Duck Hunter's Bible, in my opinion. And the reason that I asked Josh Beckham and Drew Keith to be on here with my co-host Skip and I for the Wildfowl 2021 Giant Gear issue is because you guys get it. You know what it takes to be successful. And the reason I say that is that hunting should not be dictated or dependent on a pile pic or somebody else liking your picture on Instagram. I don't give a you-know-what. But what I do care about is that you two and Skip, you get it and what it takes to be successful, because success is going to bring what? Confidence. And confidence is going to bring the ability to go back. And what we need more than anything at this time in our lives, and Drew, you're unreal with this, with 4-H and the shooting sports and the NWTF and DU and everything that goes into conservation and what Honey Break stands for. We have to keep these new blood. COVID just got a lot of new blood into the pipeline, fishing, hunting, cooking, whatever it is. We got to keep them now. And it's because of this magazine and this innovation that we're talking about, and outfitting services and adventure services like Honey Break that are going to keep us here and keep the new blood into it. Because without the new blood, who are you going to sell to, Beckham? Who's Jeff going to sell to? Who's Honey Break going to guide? We got to get new blood in here. The old money's there. I get it. It's established. But because of Skip and efforts of manufacturers of this magazine that are in this magazine, we're American hunters, man. And this is badass that we get to wear this stuff. Yeah. Look at it.
It's our way of life.
It's unbelievable, right, Drew? Look how giddy you are. I know that you're going to go out your back door right now and get on a wakeboard and flip the wake, but right now I bet you're thinking about mallard ducks and the decoys.
Hey, it's supposed to be 66 degrees here tonight. We had I saw our first bunch of teal this morning at the farm.
Skip, how many times have we heard this in the last 4 days from Tony Vandemore, Terry Denman, and one other person said we saw our first blue wing. Tony Vandemore saw him up there. He had a little cold snap up in northern Missouri. He's like, saw my first blue wing. I mean, think about how giddy we are for a little thing this big that tastes unbelievable. But the thing's this big, and it's almost impossible to freaking hit. It's almost impossible to shoot. How crazy are we to get fired up for that little blue wing teal? This is the best lifestyle in the world. Josh Beckham, do you agree?
I 100% agree.
Are you fired up for it?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
What's your first excursion?
I'll teal hunt a little bit in Arkansas, but I don't get to do much teal hunting anymore. That's our busy time up until duck season. Really, I was supposed to go to Canada. I've scratched that for other reasons, but I may go to North Dakota. But outside of that, I'll be Arkansas, Louisiana come November.
Skip Knowles, you hear Josh Beckham talking about teal hunting. One thing that comes to mind is Drew and I's mutual friend, and Josh, you know Lee Lofton. He wrote a song called Cottonmouth. The Cottonmouth song's not about the cottonmouth snake, but when I hear blue-winged teal, I think of cottonmouth snakes. Drew, do you see a lot of cottonmouth still in Louisiana, or have you what they call, quote unquote, eradicated them? I'm going to think that's impossible. And Skip, would you go hunting with Drew Keith and the Honey Break boys knowing that you were going to have a cottonmouth encounter? Go ahead, Drew, first, and then Skip.
Well, first off, Christian Curtis won't go hunt with me in teal season or turkey season because he's deathly afraid of snakes. and the first time I took him teal hunting, we get out there and we missed the boat road, and I'm shining out across there. Well, we have Jared likes to put reflectors on everything, and usually we use red and green. Well, this time he bought some like yellow look ones, which is the same color as alligator's eyes. And so when I shined over to where I thought the pit was, I saw four little eyes over there. I was like, that's gators. and Chris Curtis said, what? What do you say, Doug? It's just alligator. And she kept on going. And I was like, y'all wait here. Let me go. So I waited over there. And it's like, all right, come on, we're going to walk from here. And I was like, oh, watch that snake right there. And kept on walking. He's like, stop. It's like, come on, just go around and it's fine. We get in the blind. I get to the blind. I was like, all right, y'all go ahead and get in there. I'm going to go put the decoys out. So I'm putting the decoys out. I look back. I mean, putting like 4 dozen decoys out for teal, a couple of mojos. Sweating. Look back. They're all standing on top of the blind. I was like, listen, what are you doing? You're a hunter. You got it before. What's the deal? I ain't going in that black hole first. You said you saw alligators over here. So yeah, you have to be one with the snakes, and like I say, most of the time, I mean, don't get me wrong. When I was a kid, I was definitely afraid of them and spiders, but it's kind of part of the job. You got to learn which spiders are poisonous and which ones aren't, and you learn which snakes are poisonous, which ones aren't. And for the most part, if you make enough noise, they're going to get out of the way. They don't want to be with you any more than you want to be with them. But if you start messing with them, that's whenever they start, I guess, be going into the attack mode. And cottonmouths probably are more aggressive than anything else. But did you see the video the other day from when I was cleaning out the control structure and the gator was in there? Yeah,
the one you text me, that would flip me out a little bit.
That was a little. I was not playing for it. I had my radar was set for snakes, and I beat all around the pipe, making sure the snakes were gone, and got in there and reached down with both arms to my into that deal and pulled it out, and I'm like, and I saw this stick coming out. I was like, and I was grabbing sticks to get the mud off of it. I was like, oh man, there's a good stick, and I bent down. I was like, that's not a stick. It's his teeth coming at me.
Oh, God dang it, dude.
And that's when I base jumped from the top of that slippery pipe all the way to the land over there.
Skip, before you answer about the teal hunt and the snakes, Drew Key, set the record straight. Is alligator good to eat? Yes or no?
100%.
Oh, I wish I had some. God, it is a go. The lower jaw and the tail, I love to eat alligator. That's the only reason I would go, besides, what you guys do with your guiding and stuff. I'm like to the point in my alligator hunting career that I've done it. I love it. I enjoy it, but I don't need to kill another one. I just want to eat all the ones y'all kill. I'm the same way with mountain lion hunting. I'll chase them with dogs all day long, but it's going to be somebody else that arrows them or puts them down. I love it all. I love every bit of hunting, but Skip, have you eaten alligator? Have you eaten it at Honey Break with one of my favorite humans in the world? And Miss Shelley's sizzling squirrel recipe is in the new Provider Cookbook that comes out November 9th. I got a picture of Miss Shelley in there showing me how to cook squirrel. And she's admitted on camera that if it's roadkill, she's picking it up and cooking it still. I freaking love that lady. Have you been there, Skip? Have you eaten Miss Shelley's cooking? Have you eaten gator? And would you go on a cottonmouth infested teal hunt with Drew Keith?
I've eaten a ton of gator. I'm from North Florida as a kid, and really grew up hunting in the South Georgia swamps. And I remember buzzing along South Texas marshes with my dad in his little car topper boat and seeing a great big cottonmouth slide into the water. Dad would barely slow the boat down, grab his old Stevens double barrel 12 gauge in one arm, boom. I thought it was normal. He's half deaf because my dad slipped in a muddy trail, fell on his face in the dark, and a great big cottonmouth was from me to the computer screen, about 2 feet from his head, just laying there. And his buddy Ned Cheshire reached over with his 20 gauge and blew the snake away.
Golly.
Got rid of the rest of my dad's hearing, but it's pretty normal to me. I've seen snakes in Arkansas and Louisiana pretty late in the fall. I shot one when I was standing in flooded timber. I think it was November, just a little cottonmouth dangling near me. But I don't have near the snake hang-ups that some people do. I could tell snake stories all day, but my sister got bitten by a coral snake when I was a kid in Florida. But I didn't tell the subtext. We were trying to catch it, and we'd already planned it. I do love alligator. I'm a little confused because I've got some buddies in North Florida who've killed 5 gators over 12 feet long, one of them up to 14 feet, just giant 800-pound prehistoric monsters. And they insist to me that the big ones are good to eat too. The last one I killed was 9.5 feet, and it was like wadding up a piece of notebook paper in your mouth and chewing on it until.
Really? Did you fry it?
And they insist that the big ones are just as good to eat. Yeah, I fried it and I tried to smoke some, which was weird, but.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways to do it was take speck of belly, which is dry meat, and then take the gator and cube it up like into like stew meat, and then so you have the grease out of the gator and then the dry speck of belly, and when you make that down on like a sauce pecan. Little red gravy.
Oh, that sounds good.
Big gators too, Drew?
What's that?
You eat the big gators too?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Must have just had a bad one. But, yeah. I don't let snakes slow me down, Chad. And I think
Nothing slows you down, Skip. Nothing
I'm kind of
slows you down.
Bugs. I remember hunting down there at Bigger's place one year, and in your peripheral vision, you think the teal are coming in, and you see this motion, giant mosquitoes, so big you can see their eyes,
Yeah, it's a state bird.
They freak me out a little bit.
State bird.
State bird.
Guys, this has been good. I love the passion.
The good thing about Louisiana now that the women are getting so much Botox that it's messing with the beaks on the mosquitoes when they hit them, so they're all puffed like that.
Oh, just kidding, women of Louisiana. Just kidding. Yeah. Hey, This has been awesome. Josh, what's up with Banded? Where can we find you? I know Simmons has got it. Final Flight's got it. Max Prairie Wings is so awesome. Their catalog store in Stuttgart, Arkansas. Dealers all over the country. Great brand. Josh, you the man. Any closing words? Where can we find Banded? Where can we find them online, on social media? Give us something to go out on.
You can find us on social media, on Instagram at Banded Brands. Facebook is Banded Brands. If you're in the South, I cover Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma. Adam Piles, he covers Arkansas, Missouri. You can get us from Rogers to Dunn's to Presley's, Max, D&W, Final Flight, Simmons, Vans in Mississippi. I'm leaving tomorrow morning for a big expo in Mississippi. It's supposed to be the largest outdoor expo Mississippi's ever had. Vans, one of our good dealers over there, they're going to have a booth there. You can go to Texas. We're in all the Shield stores. Texas just opened up a brand new Shield store. It's the largest sporting goods store in the world, 331,000 square foot of every brand that you can possibly imagine. And there's a lot of good brands out there. I favorite Bandit. Drew is on board with us. He does a lot of good stuff down at Honey Break with us, and I know you do too, Chad. One thing I do want to closing words with us is there's a lot of brand bashing that we see over the internet. The internet's created a lot of chaos. But I told a guy the other day, and he was with another brand, is Rusty Creasy. He's with Frog Togs, and I told him, we can all be on the same team because we're in this for one reason, and that's for the ducks. But we can swing a separate bat. You know, we don't have to swing the same bat, but everybody's on the same team.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that we need to get back to that of losing the ego, humility playing more of a role in our lives, and we got to protect hunting. And we got to be in this together. We are on the same team. And, you know, everybody wants to win the World Series, but if baseball was under attack, I promise you that Mike Trout and Aaron Judge would be on the same team in a heartbeat. So we need to look at it like that. Very well said.
Same way with outfitters. The same thing. You know, different places do different things, but we're all in it for one thing. You know, it's about the duck.
Drew, you got to separate. You kind of separated yourself apart though with Miss Shelley. I mean, I'm going to go down there and eat her cooking. I don't care if I see a duck, but I do see a lot of ducks. I do see a lot of ducks at Honey Break, but I'm going for the food. I'm going for Miss Shelley. I'm almost afraid sometimes to walk into the lodge because I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I'm still like this little trailer trash duck hunter over here on the right, and I'm just going to stay out of the place. The place is just unbelievable. Skip, I know you've been to Honey Break. I know you can't wait to get back. I assume you have. I shouldn't say I know. Skip, this has been another banger. I appreciate your time. Everybody on the newsstands, in your mailbox, the 2021 Giant Gear issue from Wildfowl magazine. It's unbelievable. 196 pages of the gospel. Can't thank you enough, Skip, for all your effort, all your team's effort at OSG and what you guys have done. Another stellar presentation of the culture of duck hunting and all the brands that represent it. Thank you, Josh Beckham, Banded Brands, bandedbrands.com, Drew Keith, Honey Break, the Honey Break Experience on Realtree 365. Follow Drew and Jared and Miss Shelley and Tad, all the badass individuals and crew at Honey Break. I've been on record of saying you'll never find a better operation. Never. You won't see it, from the way that the equipment looks to the way that the food tastes. It's unbelievable experience. Skip Knowles, do you have any closing words to take us out of the waders, apparel, and camo section of the gear issue at Wildfowl magazine?
Actually, you know, like always, you've made me really hungry talking about gator meat, and we talked about in the past, and it always comes up, so I'm ready to go eat. But I just would like everyone to focus on the fact that what we touched on earlier, the good old days really are now. I mean, we went out and shoot 100 or 200 snow geese. Our ancestors didn't do that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They made the news if they shot a goose. We'll regularly limit, you know, a dozen guys now on honkers. And they didn't have those opportunities in the past. And one really cool thing that's in the current Wildfowl September issue, written by my friend John Gordon over at Ducks Unlimited, is the reason we have a blue-winged teal season and early teal season is because hunting was so bad in the late 50s due to drought. The hunters were leading the sport, and they would try to create more opportunity. That's when the early teal season was created. So sure, there were those black cloud days through the 70s and 80s and 90s, but we got a lot to celebrate now. I just like people to focus on that.
Celebrate good time. Come on. Got to celebrate. I know you all love Cool in the Gang. Chad Belding, Skip Knowles, Drew Keith, Josh Beckham, the Fowl Life Podcast, the 2021 Wildfowl Magazine Giant Gear issue. Thank you all for being here. Tom, Jake, hit that button. We're going to go out with a standard right now. This is usually the theme song of This Life Ain't For Everybody podcast and the Fowl Life television show, but we're going to make it the theme song of this episode. This is Leith Lofton singing a song that Leith Lofton and Drake White wrote together. This is called What You Gonna Do When the Money's All Gone. Y'all take care.
We're all equal, that's what I think. I don't believe heaven has a bank. Make good use of your time on earth and don't make a dollar bill all it's worth. 'Cause I'd rather be